Okay, welcome to this TKT exam from EnglishGame.com in the course TKT Preparation. Let's start. For questions 1 through 6, match the underlined words or groups of words in the text with the language items listed A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. Let's check it out. So we have, my oldest brother is quite different from me. He's a bit old-fashioned, really. Old-fashioned. I have 2 words as an adjective. Using these 2 words together is going to give me a compound adjective. Compound adjective. And then it says, I suppose he's just very traditional. For example, he always wears a suit, a tie, and leather shoes. And I could say and think that those 3 words or expressions are going to be used in this exam as, let's think about it, as a word family. A word family is this group of words that are related. I could think about suits, ties, and leather shoes as formal clothing. And that is what makes a word family. Then it says, listens to the radio and plays cricket. But the worst thing is that he's got no sense of humor. And that really gets on my nerves. Let's think about gets on my nerves. So we can say that gets on my nerves. It's an idiom. That would be the definition for an idiom. I also get the impression that he thinks I am pretty worthless. It's another adjective, but this time it has a suffix, worthless. So that would make it a word with affix. Then we can say that, which doesn't help our relationship. We rarely see each other these days. He sometimes calls in. Now we can think about what call in may mean. Maybe you have understood that to call in is a phrasal verb. He calls in when he's in the area, and then we may go out together. But we usually end up arguing about which bus stop. That's the new word, bus stop. So maybe after careful consideration, we can say that a bus stop is a compound word. A compound word. So this is a way of practicing this first part, which implies identifying the parts of the speech. Then it says, for questions 7 through 13, match the underlying clauses with their meanings in the sentences listed A, B, or C. Mark the letter A, B, or C on your answer sheet. So, the meanings. We have conditions, reasons, and results. And then if we check out number 7, it says, it was such a bad film that we walked out. that we walked out. Let's think about this. We can think of this sentence as saying something like, well, this is a result of watching a bad film. We were watching a bad film and it was so bad that we walked out. As a result of watching a bad film, we didn't even finish it. We just walked out. Then it says, I decided to go and see him since he hadn't phoned me. So let's think about phoning or not calling. Not calling is not a result, it's the reason. I am going to see you because you didn't call me. You didn't phone me. He hadn't phoned me. That means it is a reason. It is a reason. And then it says, I fell asleep in the car because I was tired. So the reason why you fell asleep is because you were tired. So we can also say it's a reason. The reason you fell asleep. And then for number 10, it says, as there was no coffee left, I had a cup of tea. So maybe we can say, because there was no coffee, I had a cup of tea. That would be another reason. The reason why I had a cup of tea is that there is no coffee left. Then for number 11, it says, I want to speak to him again unless he apologizes. And that may mean first you apologize. Then I will speak to you again. So it is my condition. If you apologize, I speak to you. But if you don't apologize, I don't speak to you. So we can consider this as condition for the sentence. Then it says, as long as you can save that money yourself, you can go on the trip. As long as you can save the money yourself. This means if you can save the money yourself, you can go on the trip. If you cannot, you are not going on this trip. And then for number 13, we have, I walked into town so that I could avoid the traffic. So we can think about the expression by understanding that the reason I walked into town was to avoid the traffic. So the expression, so that I could avoid the traffic, indicates the reason. The reason I walked to town was to avoid the traffic. So this is the way I want you to understand for reasons, conditions, and results. Then we can just move on to the next exercise. And it says, for questions 14 through 19, choose the correct lexical or phonological terms to complete the sentences. Mark the correct letter A, B, or C on your answer sheet. So we have a few words here, and let's see how we can understand them together. Unhappy, disagree, and incorrect are all examples of prefixes, parts of the sentence and words, particles you add to the beginning of words. Now let's think about this. Fall and fall, male and male, buy and buy are examples of homophones. Homophones are two words that are pronounced exactly the same, but the meaning of these words is different. Then we have put out, put off, and put away. These are examples of multi-word verbs. Is one verb put with other words out, of, away, into, back. Then we have the words vehicle, car, bicycle, plane, or pet, dog, cat, rabbit, or food, bread, pizza, or meat. And these are examples of lexical sets, groups of words with a related meaning. Then we have number 18. Can't, don't, his are all examples of contractions. Then we have did and did, here and fair, track and truck. And these are examples of minimal pairs. Two words that are pronounced almost the same. The difference is just an individual word or sound. And talking about sounds, we're going to check on the phonetics part of the exam. So for questions 20 to 28, match the underlined letter A in each example for the phonemic symbol or symbols, which would be used in a dictionary entry listed A, B, C, or D. Mark the correct letter A, B, C, or D on your answer sheet. You need to use some options more than once. So let's check out here. First of all, I want to go ahead and check the sounds. This is A. Option B is A. Option C is A. And option D is or the schwa sound. The first word is late. And as you could probably see and hear, I am making two sounds. So number 20 is option B. A for late. Then number 21 is pronounced player. Player. As you probably understand from here, we also make the phoneme A in the word player. Player. Then we have number 22. The word is party, or to make this emphasis, party, in which I try to make a long vowel here, which is R for paw, party, party, party. I just want to emphasize on the fact that if you have a vowel plus an R, in British English, it becomes a long vowel. Party or party in North American English. Since this is the British exam, it would be party. I hope it is clear. Then for number 23, alphabet. Alphabet. And what we can say in number 23 is that the word alphabet has the stress in this syllable, which is all. Alphabet. So every time you have a stressed syllable, you are going to use this symbol. Alphabet. Alphabet. Then, for number 24, we have the word island. 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 And we can say that since the underline A is in the weak syllable, because the stressed syllable is I, island. For weak expressions, weak syllables, we are going to use the straw sound. Island. For weak syllables, use the straw sound. Then we have the word hard, which can also be pronounced hard, because there is an A and an R for hard. So we can go ahead and say that this is another example of the long vowel, which is in this case option C, hard. Hard. Hard, meaning in British English, you can make a long vowel by having a regular vowel plus R. Then for number 26, we also have a weak sound in pizza, because the underlined word, in this case letter A, is in the weak syllable, pizza, pizza, pizza. That means it belongs to the option D, the weak syllable. Then we have grandson, grandson. And for grandson, we can say that this expression grand makes part of the stressed syllable. And if it is part of the stressed syllable, it is going to be option A, grandson, which would make me think about changing the color here for better understanding. I might want to say that the word grandson is going to take this color to show that option A is my answer for grandson. And for number 28, invitation. Invitation makes me think about another diphthong, A, which is option B, invitation. Invitation. I understand this might be a little bit tricky, which is why I want to emphasize on the answers. I want to try to make it more graphic here by saying that A gets the words alphabet and grandson. The pronunciation would be alphabet, grandson. Then I'm going to also say that the phoneme A takes the words late and player. Player, if you want to say. And of course, invitation. We say invitation. Then we can also go ahead and say that the weak sound, in this case, the strong sound, vowel plus R, takes the words party and hard. And finally, the straw sound takes the weak syllables for the words island and pizza. I would like to probably consider the difficulty of getting the answers correct in here. So, with your permission, I'm going to just go ahead and clarify. So, number 20 and 21, we are going to say the answer is B. Number 22, C. Number 23, A. Number 24 and 25. 24 and 26 is going to be D. 25, C. 26, A. 27, B. Probably this is going to explain better so you can understand better. And we're going to work on the functions unit. For questions 29 through 34, match the example sentences with the functions listed A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So, let's think about it. Let's say if a person says, I can't decide whether this radio is worth buying or not, we can say the person is expressing doubt. The person is saying, I don't know if I should do it or not. Doubt is what you are expressing here. Number 30. I'm going to visit my mother this afternoon. And by doing that, the person is expressing an intention. Because this is what I want to do. I want to visit my mother. Number 31. I'd rather have the blue one. Someone saying this sentence would be expressing preference. The person is expressing what he or she wants. Then if somebody goes ahead and says, if I finish the work earlier, can I get paid more? Is the person expressing obligation? No. Offering help? The person is not offering help. The person is negotiating. He's trying to find something out of something else. Number 33. You must fill in the form before the end of the month. This is an obligation. I'm telling you what you must do. And finally, for number 34, it says, Paula's got a chance of winning the race. The person is not offering help. The person is predicting. Is giving a prediction for the future, saying that she is very likely to have it. And here we have For questions 35 through 40, look at the language skills and 3 possible descriptions of them. 2 of the descriptions are appropriate in each situation. 1 of the descriptions is not appropriate. Mark the descriptions A, B, or C, which is not appropriate on your answer sheet. Let's check it out. Productive skills involved. So we're going to say 2 things that are good about it and 1 thing that is not, and that is going to be our answer. So for number 35, we say expressing rather than understanding language. When you speak, that's what you do. You're expressing ideas, you're not understanding them. In speaking and writing activities, yes, speaking and writing activities is what you do when you use productive skills. When you use productive skills, you do not listen or read the tasks. So, since this is what we are being asked to do, this is our answer. Productive skills don't involve listening and reading tasks. Number 36. Redrafting involves copying a piece of writing out neatly. That means very, very carefully. That is what is not involved. Because redrafting involves doing a piece of writing for the 2nd or 3rd time. You write down, check out, write again, everything. Double check, find more mistakes, and write again. And making changes to a piece of writing. You make those changes with the intention of improving your writing. So the answer we are looking for in number 36 is option A. Now we're going to get number 37. Process writing involves the process of writing. Let's think about it. Planning a piece of writing. You have to plan your piece of writing. Writing without editing. If we are talking about the process of writing involves editing. So you do have to edit. And it says writing without editing. Because using the writing soft skills is also used. It means you have to go through all the steps in the writing process. So if I say that the process of writing involves writing without editing, it would be what I'm looking for. The one that does not get involved in the process. Then number 38, listening for gist involves, let's think about it, being able to understand every word of a text. Maybe that is listening for detail. But listening for gist involves working out the overall meaning of a text without concentrating on the details and forming a general idea of what the text is about. So the option we are looking for is option A, the one that does not get involved in the process of listening for gist. Number 39. Proofreading involves checking for language errors. We would say so, right? When you proofread, you are going to be paying attention to what is wrong with it. So it does involve reading your written work word by word. Let's think about it. For number 39, if you proofread, you want to pay attention to every single detail. What we can say about proofreading is that it does not involve paraphrasing. Proofreading means checking, finding mistakes, finding, let's say, what can be improved in spelling and punctuation and all these aspects. But it doesn't involve paraphrasing parts of a text. Then for number 14, it says speaking accurately involves using the right expressions to convey meaning, using colloquial language to express ideas, or using lexemes and structures correctly. So we can say that if you are speaking accurately, it means you're using the right expression. And it also means you are using lexemes and structures correctly. It doesn't mean you have to use colloquial language to express ideas. Accurately speaking means using the grammar in a correct way and the expressions, the lexical expressions without mistake. It doesn't really mean using informal language. I hope it was clear then. So we can go over the next section. For questions 41 through 46, match the classroom activities with the strategies for motivating learners listed A through G. Mark the correct letter, A through G, on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So we have the classroom activities and the strategies for motivating students. And it says, at the start of the class, the teacher writes on the board what she hopes the learners will achieve in the lesson. Let's think about that. You are the teacher. You are in your class. You start by writing what you want your students to learn. How is that called? Let's think about it. I hope you can read these options. And you can consider the word aim. Aim. That means you are making the learning aims clear to learners, to what they are going to learn. The aim is your objective, what you want your learners to learn. Then number 42, the teacher introduces a new topic by using situations from the learner's own lives. You are going to teach your topic and you want to use your learner's own lives as an example. And by doing this, you are personalizing your lesson. You are making your lesson personal and relevant to the students' own lives. Then for number 43, we can say that the teacher gives only positive feedback on language used in an activity. If you want to do this as a strategy for motivating your learners, it's because you want to build up learners' confidence in their abilities by telling them, listen, you made some mistakes, but you really did well on this and that part, and I think this is good. If you can just keep practicing on it, I'm pretty sure you'll do better next time. So your students start feeling better. Then it says, students A and B exchange information in order to complete a text. When you do that, what you're really doing is you are giving your learners a reason for communicating with one another. That's what happens when you do that. And then it says, the teacher finds out how and when learners want to be corrected. So what would you do if you did this? You want to find out how and when. If you do that, you will be doing asking. I'm going to just go ahead and do it here. You will be asking learners about their learning preferences. You want them to teach you, to tell you, to let you know how and when they would like to be corrected. And then if it says the teacher shows the learners how to use the self-access center, it will be because you want them to be able to do things on their own. So if you teach your learners how to use the self-access center, it's because you want to encourage learner autonomy. You want your students to learn that way. So in case this is not totally clear because of the color code that I'm using, what if I just give you the answers? Number 41 is option F. Number 42 is option C. Number 43 is option B. Number 44 is option G. Number 45 is option A. And number 46 is option E. As you probably remember here, there is one extra option which you don't need to use. And that was make sure that learners understand instructions. Okay. Let's continue here. And it says, for questions 47 to 52, match what the student does with the learning strategies listed, A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So we have here the strategies and what the student does. So I'm going to start by checking out the instructions from what the student does. The student says, imagine that your student says, I try to identify the part of the speech from the other words in the sentence. The student is telling you that, just saying it out loud. The student is trying to guess the meaning from the context. How? The student is trying to find out whether this word is a verb or an adjective. And is trying to find out from a whole sentence. So probably you need to read the whole sentence to make sense and understand. Then for number 48, it says what the student says. I make a note of the stress when I put words into my vocabulary notebook. So you have a vocabulary notebook, but you are trying to make notes of the stress of the word. If you do that, you are going to be highlighting pronunciation features, because a pronunciation feature is word stress, sentence stress, and this is how you can understand it better. Then, if the student says, I try to listen out for new words in expressions rather than individual words. Students, in this case, are going to be focusing on collocations. They would focus on collocations because you need to understand the collocation as the whole set of words. You couldn't understand a collocation if you try to paraphrase, in this case, translate or understand word by word. it wouldn't be quite okay to understand collocations in that manner. Then it says, if I'm not sure what form to use, I will look it up in the grammar book. So, if you do that, if you use your grammar book, that means you're going to be consulting reference resources. Then, if the student says, I sometimes draw timelines in my grammar notebook. The student would be illustrating meaning. So by drawing things, they can retain information much better. And finally, if the student just tells us something like, occasionally, I test myself on recently taught words so I don't forget them. The student is telling us how he or she memorizes these expressions. Because when you do that, you are going to try to see if you can remember these recently taught words. You don't want to forget them. So occasionally, you go on and test yourself. Then here we have then for questions 53 through 58, match the needs of each group of students with the most suitable type of course listed. A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So here is the way of grouping students. Let's try to understand it. So it says, these young adults need a range of study skills before going to a British university. So let's think about that. If you have students that are going to a British university, it means they need to understand two important things: note taking and writing academic essays. Why? Because this is what you do when you go to a university, when you go to college. You have to take notes on your lectures or lessons, university classes, and you also need to write down academic essays to justify opinions or present facts in class. So this is what you would do in your course with your students. Then it says, these adult beginners are going on holiday and need to learn how to communicate in an English-speaking environment. So think about this. If you know your students are going on holiday to English-speaking countries, you're going to give them a course focusing on basic language skills for everyday situations. English for, let's say, the airport, taking a cab, making a reservation, ordering food in a restaurant, etc., etc. Then it says this group of young children have a short attention span. Their parents want them to learn English while having some fun. So in here, if you have these people, what would you do as a teacher? You may prepare an activity-based course with lots of games, songs, and stories. So your learners, your young learners, keep motivated. And then it says, These business people need to meet and work with people from other countries at international conferences. So in this case, remember, people from other countries. What if you need to work with, let's say, people from Asia, the Middle East, and Europe all together? I would say, first of all, they're going to be meeting. So you're going to have a course, which is, first of all, oral, because you need to develop English for meetings and English for presentations, and also cross cultural material. You want to think about the different cultures involved in your class. Then it says for number, let's just get this one ready. 57, these secretaries and receptionists want to focus on vocabulary and skills which are useful for them in their work. So, what kind of vocabulary and skills? For example, the speaking skills. So, you're going to prepare for them a course based on role plays and situations, such as greeting visitors and telephoning clients. That's usually what a secretary can do of her job. And finally, we can just say, I'm going to just pick and choose the best color. And it's going to be this one then. These scientists need to keep up to date with the latest developments in their subjects. So if you want to give this, remember, they're not going to be speaking, they're not going to be writing, they're going to be mostly reading because they want to know what is going on in their field. So you are going to offer them an online course, which students read text, in which student reads text, and specific topics. Yes, they need to read text on, let's say, their field. They are mathematicians. They are, let's say, biologists, chemists. So that's what you want to give them, a course on those topics based on the latest trends, because they want to keep up to date. So that's what you're going to do with your learners in your courses. And now we're going to talk about the teaching approaches. For questions 59 through 64, match the class activities with the teaching approaches listed A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So here we have the teaching methods, and then we have the class activities. So we're going to go ahead and read the first one, number 59. What do we find in number 59? Number 59. I asked the groups to design an advertisement for a new type of cereal. While they were working, we looked at some real advertisements together, and the students practiced writing some slogans. So what kind of teaching approach would this be? So we can think about the task-based learning, or TBL, because in here, students learn something from a task. What is the task? The task is to prepare something, make it real. And as you do this with them, you start teaching what needs to be taught. Not everything, just the expressions they would need to complete and achieve the task. Then we have number 60, and it says, I gave the class an exercise on the past simple and past continuous. Lots of students found it difficult. So I explained the grammar Then they practiced in pairs. So in this case, we can say that three things happened. First, you gave them a test. You test them. You gave them the test. So you tested them on simple past versus past continuous. They didn't understand. So you taught, and after this, you tested them again. That's why the method is teach, test, teach. But in this case, it's going to be test first, teach second, and test in the end. TTT, test, teach, test. That would be the class approach you decided to use with this group of students. And then it also says, I gave the class a series of instructions. For instance, to stand up and turn around, which they followed. Then some students gave me the same instructions. And this is the total physical response method. This is what you do in class. This is how you teach English. This works very well with kids. Then we have 62. And it says, I'm going to get a color here first so we can understand the option selected. I introduced the new structure to the class by showing a set of pictures while I said sentences containing the structures. Number one, you presented, you taught, you introduced. Then I gave pairs some sentence prompts to complete. Then they were practicing. Finally, students talked in groups about a similar set of pictures while I monitored their conversations. It means they produced. So the approach used was the PPP, presentation, practice, and production. After this, we can check on the next statement, which says, I gave the class some if sentences containing second and third conditional structures. In pairs, they discussed the sentences and completed a set of grammar rules for the form and use of the two structures. So if you do this, you are going to be applying the guided discovery method, in which you tell them something they may not know well, then you go over this topic so they can in the end make their own, let's say, conclusions. They can draw their own conclusions by what you have taught them, which is why option 63 is the guided discovery method. Then we have number 64. And it says, I gave the class an authentic text from a magazine about unusual sports. We found lots of useful sports collocations and in it, and I looked in some detail on how the text was written. The students then practiced using some of the new language orally and in writing. So if you do this, if you give them text or base your lesson on vocabulary, you're going to be using the lexical approach. So the one not used in this exercise was the grammar translation method. Then it says, for questions 65 through 70, match the teacher's action with the introductory activities for different lessons listed A through G. Mark the correct letter A through G on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. So these are the introductory activities and the ways to understand them. For example, the teacher asks the students to look at pictures of Paris before they listen to a recording about tourist attractions there. If a teacher does this, the teacher would be setting the scene, preparing the students for what's coming. A talk about Paris or the listening about Paris or tourist attractions. And then it says the teacher asks the students to repeat sentences after her. If you do this, you would be drilling. Drilling means having students repeat what you say. Then, if the teacher checks whether the students understand when the new language is used. When it is new language, the topic expressed here is the concept questions. You ask concept questions when you just have taught language part, when you just present the new topic and you want to make sure your students have understood what you wanted them to understand. Then it says the teacher does a short game with the students to give them energy. If you do that, you are going to be doing a warmer. That's what you'll be doing if you want your students to feel energetic at the beginning of your lesson. And then it says the teacher asks the students for examples of different kinds of fruits and writes them on the board. If you consider they should know it, you will be eliciting language because maybe they studied this with you or somebody else in the past. So they are supposed to know the meaning of all these words, of vocabulary expressions that you want to ask them. And then it says, the teacher does an action which shows the meaning of a new word. And that would be miming. You mime when you want to teach them by gestures new vocabulary words, in this case, mostly action verbs. So the one that was not used was option F, explaining. Then, for questions 71 through 75, look at the questions about classroom activities and 3 possible answers. Choose the correct letters or answers A, B, or C. Mark the correct letter on your answer sheet. So let's think about it. It says, let's just check up here. Which one of these does not involve putting things in order? So you can say ranking. You say first, second, and third. So you're ranking them. Jumbled paragraphs. Yes, with the jumbled paragraph activity, you need your students to tell you this is going to be the introduction, and after that, the main body paragraph, and then after that, the conclusion. So that's putting things in order. But labeling does not involve putting anything in order. You just give them, you label things, but you do not order them. Now it says, which one of these does not usually involve pair or group work? Okay. Jigsaw reading is an activity in which you have 2 students with different reading parts and they have to talk and they have to arrange the reading in the correct order. So it does involve pair or group work. Oral repetition choral repetition is just the whole class repeating after you, but they're not working together. They are just repeating. They are not working together because in information gap activities, they do have to work together. They have to walk around asking questions. And then it says, which one of these does not usually focus on grammar practice? So, a project work has nothing to do with grammar because transformation exercises, when you give students an affirmative sentence and you want them to change it into a negative sentence, involves grammar, and gap fills also involves grammar. Which one of these is not a speaking activity? So a mind map is not a speaking activity because mingling means talking to each other, answering questions, and role plays also involve students speaking to each other. And number 75. Which one of these is not a vocabulary learning strategy? Visualization is a vocabulary learning strategy because you want to visualize the word, object, or picture of the word you want to learn from. Problem solving does not involve memorizing vocabulary because categorization involves the student understanding where to put this word, in which category to place it. So now we're going to work on for questions 76 through 80. Match the descriptions of different tests with the types of tests listed A through F. Mark the correct letter A through F on your answer sheet. There is one extra option which you not need to use. Types of text versus descriptions of the test. So let's start with the first one. These tests are designed to test language taught on the whole course. The whole course, that is an achievement test about how much you achieved on the whole course, not one unit or module or chapter, the whole course. Then we have these tests are designed to help teachers to plan course content. So if you have this kind of tests, you can call them diagnostic tests. Diagnostic tests help me plan what to teach and what not to teach. Then we have the purpose. I'm going to use a color here. The purpose of this test is to test language taught on a part of a course. In this case, a unit or a module or an activity, a chapter. So when we have this kind of tests, we can consider the progress test because they just covered one portion of the text taught. And then for number 79, we can say that this test help teachers to put students in classes in the appropriate level. In the appropriate level, it means the placement test. With the placement tests, I'm going to know where to place my learners according to the scores they get. And finally, the marking of these tests depends on decisions made by individual examiners. That means it is subjective. It is related to a subject, a person grading these tests. This is all about the TKT Module 1 test. Remember, there are more things at EnglishGain.com. I hope you can check us out. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.